Kevin Stefanski, he's been an interesting hire. Not applauded when he was first hired nationally, but some saw some credence in the hire. And then as time went on, more and more people within the Cleveland Browns fan base started to accept him. And now we get to this point, the first quarter of his first season, where he's done a relatively good job. He's 3-1. This team is living up to its first quarter of the season expectations. So what I wanted to do was give Kevin Stefanski his first quarter grade. So let's talk about it. Real quick before this video starts, I want to make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. There'll be a ton of content coming out, so to make sure you don't forget anything or miss anything, hit that subscribe button and ding that notification bell. So I'm going to break down Kevin Stefanski's grades into some distinct categories. First one's going to be crisis management. The second one's going to be game management. The other one's going to be offensive structure, off-season management, and supporting staff. Some of these are going to include a little bit of an evaluation of Andrew Berry as well, but this is all primarily going to be about Kevin Stefanski. So we're going to start with the first one, which is crisis management. Boy, he has had to deal with a ton of crisis. It would be almost forgivable for any other first-year head coach to be smothered under the amount of crises that everybody had to deal with, from what happened with the virus protocol to being a first-year head coach to having that close call with the testing facilities in the NFL in the middle of camp. He's had a lot to panic about, a lot of crisis on that side. I mean, this is somebody who is planning to have a regular camp, a regular offseason, scheduled everything out, and then like 2 weeks before you're scheduled to start actual camp, everything gets scrapped because the entire thing changes. So Kevin Stefanski would be forgiven for handling that poorly, but the thing is, he didn't handle it poorly. He didn't even just handle it adequately. I felt like he did an excellent job handling this. I felt like the practices were well structured. I felt like he got a lot of work in. It looks like he got the bread and butter installed and kind of polished before the season started. Like, this all relatively looks like the work of, a coach in his 4th or 5th year with the team when it comes to the circumstances that Kevin Stefanski had to deal with. One does wonder what it would look like if they would have hired him instead of Freddie Kitchens a year ago, but that's playing a what about game that's never going to be solved. But yeah, given all the crisis from, the situation, the global situation alone that Kevin's had to deal with, he would be forgiven for doing a bad job, let alone doing an exceptional job. And that is what he has done through that training camp period. I don't think that's deniable at this point. The other crisis he had to deal with was the injuries that just popped up day after day that 1 week, where Mack Wilson went down, Grant Delpit went down, Nick Chubb got a concussion. Again, reasons to panic in the middle of camp. And then you have the close call with the NFL testing facility, which shuts down practice. And it was just a mess. It was a crisis on top of a crisis with a smaller crisis with a regular football crisis involved in it this time. And he did not panic. He stayed calm. He did what he had to do. He went through with practice as normal. He got what he could in. Like, Kevin Stefanski has handled all of this so well. And then week 1 happened. And that was a crisis, because not only did you lose to Baltimore, Baltimore beat you down. And people were panicking. Kevin Stefanski wasn't. And how did he come on a short week on Thursday Night Football? Played very well. On any level, you can grade any crisis that the Cleveland Browns had. The one thing you cannot say is that Kevin Stefanski did not respond adequately. He did. He responded exceptionally, and that's why he's going to get an A grade for crisis management. Kevin Stefanski's been calm under pressure, been calm under crisis. If this team goes on a 2-game losing streak or a 3-game losing streak during the season, I'm confident that he's going to be able to be calm enough to handle that crisis. He has earned that with me so far, and I think he's earned this A grade in crisis management. Now, when it comes to game management, this is a little bit interesting, right? Because 3 of the 4 times he's gone out there to coach a football game, he's been pretty good. The game management's been good. The play calling's been good. I haven't scratched my head about any timeouts or clock management situations, and the Browns have been in close games. Granted, not having to come from behind where that's going to be more important. I love how they've used Baker Mayfield in 3 of the 4 games. I like how they have kind of protected him in a way, and I like how he's gotten everybody involved, right? Everybody wants to go to the feed all these miles narratives. Well, Kevin Stefanski has done that quite well, and I feel like when it comes to game plans, 3 out of 4 times, he's attacked the weaknesses of the team he's playing sufficiently and aggressively enough to win. So those are all the good things about the game management that I really have enjoyed watching Kevin Stefanski. But Baltimore was such an atrocious, unmitigated disaster that he has to take a hit for it. Multiple terrible play calls. The fake punt on your own 30 against one of the best offenses in the NFL. A lot of terrible play calling, staying in those empty sets even when you weren't down that much and not sticking with your offense. I felt like the game plan for that game from the start was terrible because it wasn't what the Browns had done during camp that entire offseason. So he has to take a mark there because he did not use the strengths of this team. He did not attack the weaknesses of Baltimore sufficiently. So he does have to take a hit there, and that's why his grade for game management is going to be a B-. The one game against Baltimore counts for a lot because it is a division game. It is going to count twice. It's also on the road. But also, it was so bad that it took the Browns to get 3 straight wins for people to legitimately get over and trust him, which is saying something because the Browns don't often win 3 straight games. And normally, if you win 3 straight games in Cleveland, we're head over heels in love with you. You don't really have to earn anything back. But that's how bad that Baltimore game was to start the season and how concerning it was from a game plan and game management standpoint. Again, that game in Baltimore was all about the Browns from the sidelines and on the field getting in their own way. And it's nice to see that when those opportunities arose against Cincinnati, against Washington, and even against Dallas, that they did not fall under that same trap. Baker throws the interception. Cincinnati comes real close. Browns quickly run it down the field, score real quick. Then against Washington, you go down by 10, you get the interception, you score, and then you get another interception, and you score, and you win by 14. And then Dallas, right? You let Dallas come within 3 points after being up by over 20, and then you draw up a play for Odell. It scores. You win by 11 points. Those are the things when it comes to game management that sets this team apart. But how bad they came out in Baltimore does have an effect. The offensive structure. Now, what I mean by offensive structure is how is this offense designed? How do the designs look? How do the play designs look? How innovative are they? And what is special about this offense that he is bringing? And I'm only looking at offense for Kevin Stefanski because he was brought in to do this partly. So when you look at the Browns offense, the run element and everything involved with the run element is beautiful. These run designs are beautiful. The execution is beautiful. All of these things, they're some of the best in football. There's a reason why Dearness Johnson can get in there, and no disrespect to Dearness Johnson, but he can get in there and look like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb because these designs are so good that they can elevate players, and that's what good coaching does. Good coaching and good structural design on the offensive side of the ball elevates players. The last good offensive coordinator the Cleveland Browns had on their staff was Kyle Shanahan. And what did Kyle Shanahan do in 2014? He elevated his wide receivers by creating designs. He elevated his quarterback by putting him in good situations. That's what Kevin Stefanski has done for the run game design. Now, the one thing I do have to hit him for when it comes to offensive structure is it doesn't seem to translate when it comes to the pass game. There are definitely some nice things going on there, but it's just not either fully developed. Maybe they have to practice these things more. Maybe you have to install some of these things. When they aren't in that single under center formation, then, the designs start to get a little bit lackluster and they struggle to move the ball. Whenever they're in shotgun, it's been an issue. The designs just haven't been great. So maybe there's some better stuff down the line coming with this team, and maybe that comes hand to hand with Baker's development during this season. But before I can give him an A in this category, I really want to see him make some great improvements when they go into shotgun to where I feel like they can move the ball sufficiently in that area of the game as well. And he can elevate some guys in that area as well as he's doing in the run game. So until then, I have to give offensive structure a B, but the run game part is some of the best stuff in the NFL. So kudos to Kevin Stefanski. All right, so offseason management, and a lot of this stuff's good, right? I like how he handled Odell and Jarvis and how he's handling injuries in general. Big difference from Freddie Kitchens, right? Because it seems like Kevin Stefanski understands that he is coaching grown NFL football players. And what I mean by that is that he doesn't have this approach that he has to mold these already grown men into grown men like Freddie Kitchens and kind of John Dorsey have. And, when you're Bill Belichick, you can do stuff like that because that'll fly when you're one of the greatest coaches to ever do this in NFL history. But when you're Freddie Kitchens or literally anybody else, that stuff doesn't fly. So Freddie Kitchens having guys come up injured, like season ending, almost injured during the middle of the season. Remember the Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, weird dual injury, the Demarius Randall phantom concussion. These things don't happen. They're not unexplained. They're always on the report. And I know this sounds silly, but this is something that absolutely matters, is that they're always on the report. And, when you see somebody with a soft tissue injury, it's always a slow build up and then a snap count when they first get back to make sure they don't rush it back and hurt themselves even further. There's a trust there between the coaches and the players that they're going to take the right steps to make sure that you can play long term rather than just get you out there for a game to save his job. So that is encouraging because the management from that standpoint, the health standpoint, was absolutely atrocious last year. And it was one of the things that really didn't get talked about with all the circus stuff going on with Freddie Kitchens and John Dorsey. So that's good. I also like the plan for Baker Mayfield. Now, it's obvious. Kevin Stefanski likes Baker Mayfield. He likes what he can do. He sees Baker Mayfield as the future quarterback of the system. It's obvious with how he handles it with this. But Freddie Kitchens, I think, loved Baker Mayfield way too much. Where Kevin Stefanski sees the limitations of Baker Mayfield at this point in his development and what he can and cannot do and what he should wait to unleash with Baker Mayfield slowly, Freddie Kitchens was flat out in love with Baker Mayfield, which meant that he felt like he should put him in positions that an MVP candidate quarterback should be in, which is the offense that Baker Mayfield was in last year. And that ultimately turned out to be a very bad idea for not only Baker Mayfield, but his development long term. This year, they're doing what Baker does well. They're building a base off of what he does well. They want him to get really established with that, really comfortable within that part of the offense. And then I feel like they're going to add more things in eventually. And the good thing about that is that the rest of your offense, the run game, is so strong on this offense that you're able to do that and win games. So it's not just a wait for later situation. It's a win now thing. The plan is to hopefully have Baker Mayfield look massively better in the last 8 games of the season than the first 8 games of the season. And that's fine. You have to wait for quarterbacks to develop, and this is a good way to do it. You're not going to ruin him. You're going to hopefully get rid of some of that gun shyness he had last year because he threw so many interceptions and also because he got sacked so much. So you put a better offensive line in front of him. You made some really smart personnel decisions, and those things also seem to be working out. So the management has been pretty good. There has been a couple of mistakes that I do have to point out. One, they mismanaged the kicking situation. And this falls squarely on the special teams coach, Mike Prefer, in my opinion. He fell way too in love with Austin Seibert, did not want to see what the numbers were clearly saying and what the eyeballs were clearly saying for a lot of people, that, this guy has his issues as a kicker. You might want to bring in somebody to compete with him in camp to see how he handles pressure. Lo and behold, it didn't cost you anything, but he had a terrible week 1 in Baltimore, and then he ended up getting cut. You had to bring somebody else in, and everything's worked out to that point, knock on wood. So that's not the biggest mark because it didn't cost you anything, but some of the things that might cost you something down the line or are bigger deals is I don't love the personnel fix for the Delpit injury. It doesn't seem like Ronnie Harrison is a fit to do anything that Delpit has done. He's just not fast enough to find a way on the field behind Carl Joseph when you already have an issue with a lack of speed in the secondary. So I just don't see a way for him to be worth that 5th round pick at this moment with the given personnel that you have, because everybody is so slow. You can't afford to put another slow defensive back out there, which Ronnie Harrison undoubtedly is slow. For a defensive back, mind you, he's just not not a 4-5 guy. He's a 4-7 guy. And when you're replacing Grant Delpit, who's a 4-3 guy, that's just not going to work for obvious reasons. And Delpit going out with that Achilles is proving to be huge, right? Because speed, if not anything, is what the Browns are missing at free safety, and they just don't have it there. And now we're at the point where we might have to throw Sheldrick Redwine there and take snaps away from the veteran Sadejo because he's just not fast enough to be there. A messy situation with the secondary that I felt like could have been handled better. Demarius Randall popped up as a free agent during the season. I felt like he could have been worth bringing in or bringing back in because he does have the speed necessary to kind of cover that hole there. Also, I don't like that they didn't try to sign, and this is more on Andrew Berry, to be honest, they didn't try to sign some extra defensive linemen after the opt-out from Andrew Billings. I like Jordan Elliott for the future, but I don't think he's going to be a major contributor in regular season NFL games at this point. I think he would also be more useful if he was asked to do less for the defense. And part of the problem with the defense is that the defensive line is really good, but they don't have any depth. So when they get tired and they have to rotate out, that really exposes the secondary. You just look at some of the trends, and when this defense really struggles and when they're all right, it's usually when they're giving their starters on that front four some rest. And you got to give your starters some rest because it's exhausting to be a defensive lineman. It's not simply about being out of shape. I felt like they should have brought more bodies in. Mike Daniels was available. He ended up going to Cincinnati. So I felt like you could have got him. He would have been a tremendous addition to add some depth and bolster the amount of time that you got that defensive line out there and not really lose as much. Obviously, when Myles Garrett walks off the field, you're losing a ton. But if you could have brought in a couple extra bodies, it might be limited how much it affects them. And right now, it seems to affect them a great deal when they can't get pressure with the front four. So I wish there was more urgency trying to add more depth there after the Billings opt-out. But all in all, it's a pretty good job here. I have to give it a B grade. Again, some things I don't like, but other things I really do like, and it's going to be interesting to see how some of these major offseason acquisitions pan out for the entire season, like an Austin Hooper, who hasn't really produced much in the early part of this season. Support staff. Now, this is something I felt like was going to be a huge factor in Kevin Stefanski'S ability to be a first-year head coach. I felt like Freddie Kitchens had a poor support staff, partly because it was made up of dudes who didn't even coach in the NFL. I mean, he had guys from Alabama out there coaching with him for the first time in the NFL. So there was just a lack of experience on that coaching staff, which led to what a lack of experience can tend to lead to, which is a lot of ideas that sound really cool on paper, but like don't work in the NFL for multiple reasons, either because of an ideological difference between NFL players and NCAA players, or just because it just don't work when the players are much better. And I feel like if he had more veteran coaches or more of a veteran presence in his coaching staff, he would have not overthought so many of these things that he overthought. So that was a huge question. Brown signing a first-year head coach for me coming into the season was, how is the support staff going to go? And I was kind of iffy on it when the hires got announced and throughout training camp. But now as the season's gone on, it seems like he has a solid support staff. Alex Van Pelt and Kevin Stefanski have seemed to be getting along quite well. Nobody is jostling for the credit in the public eye like they were after the Baltimore win last season. So it just seems like a more healthy, less goofy situation overall. Also, they've been operating at a high level when it comes to coaching. Like, this team has not looked undisciplined. They have not gotten a lot of bad penalties. They have not, other than the first game against Baltimore, they have not shot themselves in the foot. They have not looked unprepared other than that first game against Baltimore. And they have looked like they know how to close games now, which is a huge upgrade from last year where they absolutely did not know how to close games out. So these are massive improvements. And also, when you speak about massive improvements, this offensive line, which was one of the worst units in the NFL in both run and pass blocking last year, got a few upgrades, signed Coach Bill Callahan to be the offensive line coach, and oh my goodness, that made a difference. The protections are much better. I remember last year that was a big problem with the Browns, is that the protections were just goofy. You got rid of Bob Wiley, an experienced offensive line coach, and you replaced him with somebody who didn't have a lot of experience in the NFL. And then boom, Bill Callahan steps in here, gets a hold of these guys, and he puts together one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best run-blocking offensive line in football that Cleveland has seen in quite a while. But I will say, I'm going to give this staff a grade of A- because they are 3-1 and they have done a good job. And Joe Woods, for what it's worth, he has gotten those turnovers on defense. Now, we'll see if that's going to continue to be a trend. But Joe Woods is somebody to keep your eye on for the rest of this season because the secondary is the real weak link of this team. It's the weak spot on this team. It's the one thing that's going to, that a team can take advantage of that will really take down the Browns. And that's Joe Woods. And that's really bad for Joe Woods because Joe Woods is supposed to be a secondary guy from the defensive coordinator position. This would be like if you had an offensive coordinator like Kevin Stefanski and you couldn't run the ball. That's going to be hugely concerning. So Joe Woods, I'm going to give him a break because it seems like everybody's coverage defense in the NFL, because of the shortened offseason, is absolutely terrible right now. So I'm going to give him a break. He was also dealt a bad hand with all the injuries that happened in the secondary. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a break here and not grade him too harshly. But if this continues for the next few quarters of the season, then I'm going to start to be concerned about Joe Woods. But that's my thoughts on Kevin Stefanski and what his grades and his staff grade should be. Let me know your thoughts down below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.